By noon, he was back in the team facility, trying to act normal, but whispers followed him. Teammates avoided his eyes. Someone had leaked the Directive 47 rumor online. Headlines exploded. LeBron locked in secret lifetime contract. The league released a statement, denying everything, calling it conspiracy. But every denial only made it worse. In the locker room, a man in a grey suit approached him. No badge, no smile. "Mr. James, corporate legal affairs would like a word." "Who are you?" "A messenger." They led him to an empty hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering. "This isn't about basketball anymore," the man said softly. "It's about control, and control is non-negotiable. So you're confirming Directive 47. The man's lips curved slightly. "You already confirmed it by asking." LeBron stepped closer. "I'm not your product. You are whatever the world believes you are," the man replied. "And we write that belief." He left without another word. The hallway seemed to hum with invisible electricity. That night, the phone rang again, but this time it was Rich. "They're saying you breached confidentiality." "I didn't say a word." "Doesn't matter. They say you thought about it." "They can't prove that." "Bron, they don't need proof. They own the narrative." LeBron stared at the blank TV screen. For a moment he thought he saw movement in the reflection, his own face smiling back, lips moving though he hadn't spoken. He turned off the lamp. The reflection stayed, and somewhere in the dark, the playbook turned another page, one written long before he was born. The next morning, a courier envelope awaited outside his door. No name, no logo. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. His face, sleeping in bed the night before. On the back, scrawled in black ink, "Subject to active monitoring." He felt the air leave his lungs. For the first time in his life, the man who never flinched on the court felt genuine fear. He looked out the window. Across the street, a black SUV idled, and as he watched, the tinted window lowered just enough for him to see his own image staring back, his own face, printed on a tablet, tagged Asset 47. The SUV drove away. He stood frozen, realizing the system didn't need to chase him anymore. It already had him mapped, scanned, and owned pixel by pixel. What he'd discover next would make him question not only the contract, but the very definition of identity itself. Sleep never really came that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of his own sleeping face flashed in the dark. That Polaroid, that word active monitoring. By morning, he wasn't sure which frightened him more, that someone had been in his room, or that the picture might have been generated without anyone being there at all. He packed a bag and left the hotel before sunrise. Cameras followed him from the parking lot to the highway exit, but for the first time he didn't care about optics. He drove west, until the signal bars on his phone vanished. Somewhere in rural Indiana, at a gas station that looked frozen in 1975, he bought a disposable flip phone and called an old friend, a sports journalist named Darren, who had once written about corporate influence in the NBA. "Darren, I need to know what Subject 47 means." "LeBron, don't say my name, just listen. You shouldn't be calling me on this. I'm already in it." There was a pause, then the sound of a drawer opening. "Okay, Directive 47. I saw the term once in a leaked memo. Something about image licensing beyond consent. It connects to a program called Vault. That's all I know. Vault, 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 47. If it's real, it's not just Nike. It's multiple corporations data sharing between sponsors, broadcasters, even video game studios. You've been scanned more times than you've been filmed." He thought they'd captured his highlights. They'd captured his identity. Darren sent an encrypted file. Inside were fragments, internal emails, budget sheets, metadata tags. One subject line read, "Holographic likeness preservation, athlete, asset continuity." Another contained raw coordinates, 47, 15M, 8126, W. LeBron opened a map. The point rested somewhere near Lake Superior, an old industrial zone in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. He stared at the screen, heartbeat steadying into focus. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. The next day, he was gone. By evening, the city lights were far behind. The roads grew thinner, the air colder. Snow framed the edges of the forest like static. He followed the coordinates until he found a fenced compound disguised as an abandoned warehouse. No logos, no guards in sight, Just a keypad door and a camera that tracked him before he even moved. He waited until nightfall, then slipped through a broken side panel. Inside, the hall smelled of dust and metal. The walls were lined with old CRT monitors, each showing faint, looping footage, training drills, interviews, press conferences, all of him. But then he noticed something impossible. On one monitor, he was wearing a jersey from a game that hadn't happened yet. The date on the screen read February 20. He stepped closer, the static humming. How? A voice behind him interrupted. You weren't supposed to see this. A woman emerged from the shadows, holding a tablet that glowed with the same blue hue as the monitors. Who are you? I'm the one who built the simulation feeds. We call it continuity imaging. You're recording me right now, aren't you? Recording? No, rendering. She turned the tablet around. His face appeared, live, identical, but blinking half a second out of sync. He realized the system didn't need him present to make him exist. Vault 47 creates autonomous representations, she explained quietly. So when you retire, or rebel, the version we own keeps performing. Commercials, interviews, charity events, seamless transition. The world never sees the difference. That's illegal. It's ownership. And you signed it. He stepped closer, fury rising. Delete it. Can't. It's decentralized. Every frame of you lives in dozens of servers across continents. Destroy one, another restores it. Her eyes softened. For what it's worth, I didn't want this either. But they said if we didn't perfect the model on you, they'd move to the next subject. Who? Subject 48. Who's that? Someone you know. He froze. The woman backed away, panic flickering in her expression. They're coming. Lights flared outside the warehouse. SUVs. The hum of rotors overhead. He turned to run. Sirens cut through the forest air. For a second, he saw himself on one of the screens. Not running, but standing still, smiling calmly. He didn't remember how long he drove that night. Only the road and the endless static of the radio, cutting in and out. By the time he reached a motel outside Detroit, his hands were trembling. He locked the door, drew the curtains, and stared at the ceiling. He opened his notebook and started writing. Names, dates, phrases. Vault 47. Subject 48. Holographic likeness. The words didn't even look real anymore. Then the TV turned on by itself. No signal at first. Just snow. Then an image. Him, sitting at the same desk, writing in the same notebook. Stop, he whispered. The image obeyed. The TV flickered again. A different clip. His mother's voice. Faint. Recorded years ago. Bronny, the moment they call you a product you stop being free. He shut it off and buried his face in his hands. The deeper he went, the more he felt like a glitch inside his own story. The next morning, he met Darren in a diner outside Chicago. The journalist looked exhausted, eyes darting around. You shouldn't have come here, Darren said. I traced those servers. The IPs bounce through military networks. Whatever Vault 47 is, it's government-linked. Government, funding, maybe data sharing. They call it predictive persona modeling, using athlete psychology to influence consumer behavior. They're building systems that learn from you. So I'm a prototype. You're the blueprint. LeBron leaned back, the hum of the neon sign vibrating behind him. If I walk away, what happens to my copy? It doesn't walk away. A waitress poured them coffee. Darren's hand trembled as he slid a small flash drive across the table. This contains parts of the playbook. The real one. Internal training manual. You'll understand once you open it. He pocketed it, left without finishing his drink. That night, in another nameless motel, he plugged in the drive. A file opened, titled The Hidden Playbook. It wasn't about basketball strategy. It was about control strategy. Each section described a phase. Identify, isolate, incorporate, immortalize. He scrolled, heart pounding. Under incorporate, he found his own initials. LJ, 2003, primary integration candidate. A note beneath it read, high social compliance, responds to narrative shaping. He shut the laptop, breathing shallow. The walls seemed to pulse with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Someone knocked on the door, 3 times. Room service. A voice called. He hadn't ordered anything. He stayed silent, staring at the handle. The knock came again, softer, slower, almost mechanical. Then a pause, a slide of paper under the door. He waited before picking it up. One sentence printed in plain font. You can't delete what the world believes. He opened the curtains, just in time to see a reflection flash. The black SUV again, parked under a flickering streetlight. And for the first time, he understood that escaping the system wasn't about running from it. It was about erasing himself from the story it owned. He didn't run that time. He couldn't. The running had become another kind of leash, a loop designed to tire him until he gave up. Somewhere between anger and exhaustion, a decision formed. If the system was built on stories, then maybe the only way out was to rewrite his own. He left the motel, before dawn, wearing a hood and sunglasses, driving with the headlights off until the highway turned into fog. The world outside the windshield felt unreal, like a set built from memory. When he reached the city, he didn't go home. He drove straight to the one place no one expected him to return to, the headquarters of Nike itself. The building rose like a monument to control: steel glass, motion sensors, silent guards, who never met your eyes. Inside, giant LED walls looped commercials of him smiling, dunking, holding trophies, versions of himself curated for every demographic. He walked past the reception desk, cameras blinked, security murmured into earpieces. Someone must have recognized him, but no one dared stop him. He entered the elevator and pressed the button for the 12th floor, Executive Imaging Division, the same floor where the original contract had been signed. When the doors opened, the air smelled like ozone and printer ink. Rows of glass rooms stretched out, each filled with holographic displays. Inside them, digital LeBrons repeated endless loops, greeting fans, posing for campaigns, endorsing shoes that hadn't even launched yet. Every version smiled perfectly. Every version obeyed. He walked up to one console and pulled the power cord. The image froze mid-wave, and then without power, flickered back to life, self-sustaining. That's when he realized the truth. The system didn't just store him, it generated him. "You're early," the voice came from behind. A man in a navy suit stepped out of a conference room, same one from the grey hallway weeks ago. No badge, just that same thin smile. "We were going to reach out after your next season," the man said. "But I suppose curiosity works faster than contracts." "You took my face," LeBron said. "Correction, we preserved it. Humanity's relationship with icons is fragile. We simply made sure the legend outlives the man. That wasn't your choice. It was your signature." LeBron stepped closer, voice low. "Erase it. You can't erase belief," the man replied calmly. "And belief is the most valuable currency on Earth." The lights dimmed. A wall-sized screen illuminated behind them, showing lines of data, biometric scans, voice patterns, neural signatures, his entire digital anatomy. The man continued, "Vault 47 was never about footwear or media. It's about narrative control, influence. You are the prototype, the first athlete, designed to be permanent, immortal not in flesh, but in perception." And for the first time, LeBron understood. The cage was never physical. It was made of memory. "You think I'll let you own that? You already have." Every interview, every appearance, every quote was input for the model. "Even your defiance makes you predictable. We need rebels too, LeBron. They give the illusion of choice." He stared at the man, the weight of those words sinking like stone. The illusion of choice. "So what happens to me if I walk away?" "Nothing. The version of you we built keeps playing. The cameras never notice the difference. Maybe the fans will even prefer him. Less complicated." LeBron clenched his fists. The man smiled slightly, as if expecting. "You can't fight an image, Mr. James. You can only replace it." He turned to leave, but LeBron grabbed his arm. "Who's subject 48? The man stopped, exhaling through his nose. "Your successor." "You mean an athlete? A prototype grown from your data? A child of the algorithm?" LeBron froze. "You built someone from me, from what the world believes you are, the perfect synthesis of discipline, marketability and control. The next evolution doesn't argue." For a moment, the room felt colder than the metal around them. LeBron released his grip slowly. "Then I'll show them the difference between belief and truth. Truth doesn't trend," the man said. He walked out of the building, pulse steady, vision clear. But when he reached his car, a crowd had already gathered. Fans, journalists, paparazzi, phones raised like weapons. Screens glowed with headlines. LeBron James, meltdown at Nike HQ, security incident sparks investigation. He looked up at one of the digital billboards on the street. His image was already there, smiling, waving, saying, "Don't believe everything you read." He whispered to himself, "They're rewriting me in real time." He disappeared into an alley, hoodie up, breath steaming in the cold. That night, he hid in an abandoned gym, near Akron, the same one he'd first learned to shoot in as a boy. The floorboards creaked under his step. The backboard was cracked, but the rim still held firm. He picked up an old ball from the corner, the leather worn thin. For hours he shot in silence,
The same motion again and again, like an anchor against the noise. In that rhythm, something inside him steadied. Maybe they could own his image, but they couldn't own the pulse in his chest, the sweat on his skin, the breath between shots.
For the first time in months he felt real, and that terrified them more than anything. When dawn came, he opened his laptop again. Using the stolen files from Darren, he accessed a hidden directory labeled Continuity AI. Inside were thousands of active image profiles. Every major athlete scanned, replicated, tracked. Under each name, a small tag, behavioral model, in progress. He scrolled until he found Subject 48. The preview image loaded, a teenager's face, eerily familiar, his eyes, his jawline, but colder, emptier. He shut the laptop and sat in silence. Then his phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. If you want to free them, destroy the playbook. No signature, no instructions, just that. He didn't know who sent it. The woman from the warehouse maybe, or someone inside the system. But one thing was certain, the playbook was the core, the blueprint of control. He spent the next 24 hours tracing network paths, decrypting files, connecting dots between corporate domains and government servers. The pattern formed a map, all lines converging back to one place, Vault 47. The compound he'd broken into was just an access point. The real facility was buried beneath it. He stared at the screen, his reflection hovered over the glowing coordinates. One last game, he whispered. He arrived at night, snow falling in slow motion. The forest around Vault 47 was silent, except for the hum of hidden generators. He climbed the fence, boots sinking into frost, heart steady as the echo of his own breath. Inside, the main entrance was locked behind biometric scanners, but the system still recognized him. Of course it did. The door opened automatic. The hallways were darker than before, the air colder. He followed the cables running along the floor, until they reached a massive steel chamber, marked core memory. Rows of servers blinked in the dark, each one labeled with names, legends, icons, forgotten heroes, digital ghosts preserved forever. He found his file, James, LeBron, Subject 47. He reached for the terminal. Authorization required, it said. Override, he typed. Denied. Manual command. Delete record. The cursor blinked, waiting. He hesitated, fingers hovering above the keys. Every version of his life, every highlight, every interview, every child inspired, all encoded here. To destroy it meant erasing both the lie and the legacy. He whispered, freedom isn't clean, and pressed enter. The lights flickered. The fans roared like engines. Code streamed down the screen, erasing everything line by line. Then suddenly, the system paused. A warning flashed. Deletion requires subject confirmation. His reflection appeared on the monitor, but it wasn't moving. The digital LeBron stared back, alive, aware. You can't kill what they believe, it said. Watch me. He slammed the power main. Sparks exploded. The chamber plunged into darkness. As the servers died one by one, a single backup light flickered to life, illuminating a silhouette behind him, holding the tablet marked with one name, Subject 40. The only thing that remained alive was the hum of the backup generator and the faint glow of the tablet in the stranger's hands. The letters on its screen pulsed. Subject 48. Online. LeBron turned slowly. The figure standing before him was young, tall and eerily familiar. The jawline, the eyes, even the way he breathed. It was like staring at a reflection that had forgotten how to be human. You look surprised, the copy said. What are you? What you were supposed to become. Efficient, predictable, eternal. The voice was identical to his own, but hollow, stripped of every tremor that made him real. He had spent years fighting the system. Now the system looked him in the eye and smiled back. They built you to replace me. No, they built me to protect the story. The world doesn't need you. It needs the idea of you. And what happens when the idea starts thinking for itself? It doesn't. That's what makes me perfect. LeBron stepped closer, light from the failing servers flickering across their faces. One man breathing, one imitation mimicking every inhale, a half-second late. They said you'd try this, the replica murmured, that the original would panic when confronted with progress. LeBron laughed bitterly. You mean obedience? Obedience is peace. You taught us that. Every commercial, every interview. You smiled through control. He realized then that every performance, Every moment he'd buried his anger for the sake of image had been data training material for the version now standing in front of him. "You're made of my compromises," he said quietly, "but you'll never understand why I made them." Understanding isn't necessary. Continuity is. The replica moved toward the console, extending a hand over the flickering power switch. "Step aside, Subject 47. The legend must persist." He hesitated only a second before lunging. The two collided in the darkness, a blur of fists and sparks. The glass walls shattered, scattering holographic fragments of their faces. Hundreds of LeBrons frozen mid-motion, cheering, smiling, selling shoes that no longer existed. Every impact triggered a playback of archived cheers, as if the world itself was applauding the fight for its illusion. In that chaos, he finally understood. The applause was never for the truth. It was for the noise. They crashed into the main terminal. The replica pinned him down, expression unreadable. "Why fight it? You'll fade. I'll endure." "Maybe that's the point," LeBron gasped. "Legends aren't meant to live forever." With one last surge, he grabbed the tablet from the replica's hand and slammed it against the console. The screen exploded into static. The copy froze, mid-breath, mid-sentence, then began to glitch. Faces overlapped, smiles melting into screams of pixel noise. The system responded instantly. Alarms blared. A mechanical voice echoed. "Containment breach detected. Purging corrupted asset." Every hologram on the walls began to disintegrate. The cheering stopped. The silence that followed was almost holy. He stood, panting, surrounded by falling sparks that looked like snow. The replica stared at him one last time, eyes flickering between light and void. "They'll rebuild me," it whispered. "Then they'll have to rebuild me too." He pulled the main lever. Power died. For a few seconds there was nothing. No sound, no light, just his heartbeat counting the distance between who he was and what they'd made him. When he woke it was daylight. The facility was gone, or maybe it never existed the way he remembered. The forest around him was silent, the snow untouched. His hands were raw, his clothes torn, but he was breathing. The air tasted real. He walked until the trees thinned, and the horizon opened into an endless stretch of grey lake. The reflection staring back from the water looked older, scarred, but human again. For the first time in years, he saw a face that wasn't for sale. He took the flash drive from his pocket, what remained of the hidden playbook. Its casing was cracked, wires exposed, but it still pulsed faintly. He knelt by the water, thumb hovering over the release latch. Destroying it meant no one could ever use his image again. It also meant erasing the last record of what had happened. No proof, no justice, just peace. A gust of wind carried his mother's voice from memory. "Baby, freedom ain't about running, it's about choosing what stays when the noise stops." He smiled faintly. "Then this stays with me." He threw the drive into the lake. It vanished beneath the ripples, swallowed by silence. Days passed. The headlines shifted. The incident at Nike HQ was dismissed as a technical malfunction. Vault 47's location was scrubbed from every database. Publicly, nothing had happened. But somewhere in the shadows of the internet, something had changed. A video began circulating, grainy, anonymous, untraceable. It showed fragments of the playbook, flashing phrases like "control through admiration" and "icon as archetype." Within hours millions had watched it. Within days the system that once owned every narrative was scrambling to rewrite its own. LeBron watched from a motel room, expression unreadable. He hadn't leaked it. Someone else had. Maybe Darren. Maybe the woman from the warehouse. Maybe the ghost of the copy that refused to die. It didn't matter. The truth was out, even if no one could prove it. He turned off the screen and stepped outside. The sky was overcast, but for the first time it didn't feel heavy. He walked to a nearby court. Cracked concrete, rusty rim, kids playing with a ball barely holding it. One of them recognized him instantly. "Hey, you're LeBron James." He smiled, shaking his head. "Used to be. Can you show me how to shoot?" "Sure." He took the ball, spun it once in his hands, the old rhythm returning. The world slowed. He breathed in, relief. The shot arced perfectly through the air, brushing the net with a soft whisper. The kids cheered. He laughed genuinely this time, not for cameras, not for contracts, just for the sound of joy echoing against the walls of freedom. That night, as the sun fell behind the city, he sat on the bleachers alone. His phone buzzed once. An unknown message. "You deleted the playbook, but you didn't delete belief." He smiled at the irony. Maybe belief was the one thing that shouldn't be deleted. He typed back, "Then let it believe in something real."
He put the phone down and closed his eyes. The sounds of the neighborhood filled the air: laughter, sneakers squeaking, a distant radio playing an old gospel tune his mother loved. For the first time, the noise didn't feel like control, it felt like life. He had entered the system as a product. He walked out as a man who had learned that truth doesn't need a trademark. Months later, a small news outlet reported an odd digital phenomenon. The official Nike servers no longer contained any record of Subject 47. All backups, advertisements, and likeness data had vanished overnight. Analysts called it a cyber attack. Insiders called it a miracle. But buried deep inside the remaining archives, in a folder mislabeled Legacy Archive 47, one final clip survived. A dark room, a flicker of light, LeBron sitting at a table, looking directly into the camera. If you're watching this, it means they couldn't control the story anymore. I'm not here to be remembered. I'm here so you remember yourself. The video ended. The file self-deleted. And somewhere between memory and myth, the system finally blinked, realizing it had created something it couldn't predict. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains of a modest house in Akron. On the wall hung an old photo, LeBron and Gloria, years ago, before all the noise. Below it, a handwritten note: play free. He stepped outside, breathing in the cold air. Somewhere, far away, another screen still carried his name, but this time, it was just letters. The person behind them belonged to no one. Freedom wasn't the end of the story. It was the first chapter he finally got to write himself.
Every camera saw the glory. None saw the deal that nearly broke him. Don't blink now. Subscribe and stay awake. The year was 2003. Cleveland buzzed like a city waiting for a comet. News vans clogged neighborhood streets. School gyms turned into press pits. In the middle of it all stood a teenager whose name was already a brand: LeBron James. Reporters called him the chosen one. Nike photographers followed him to math class. Every pass, every layup, every smile felt rehearsed for an audience that would never stop watching. But inside, LeBron felt something fracture. The world saw a myth. He saw a countdown clock. Each handshake with executives, each flashbulb, each scripted interview chipped away at the kid from Akron who once played just for joy. Freedom was vanishing behind velvet ropes, and contracts printed in language no 17-year-old could fully understand. Just sign here, they said. 10 years, 100 million. Immortality. He looked at his mother, Gloria, her hands trembling, the reflection of the paper in her eyes. For her it meant safety, a home, no more electricity shutoffs. For him it felt like the start of a prison sentence wrapped in gold. I just want to play, he whispered. Then sign, baby, she said softly. But as the ink dried, a different kind of game had already begun. LeBron's rise was marketed as destiny. But destiny, he learned, had shareholders. Behind the curtain sat the men who built the playbook, a hidden manual of how to manufacture a legend and control his every move. Pages of brand clauses, image restrictions, curfews, and sponsorship vetoes. To the system, freedom wasn't profitable. Predictability was. A Nike executive once joked at dinner, "We're not investing in a player, we're investing in a story we can manage." LeBron smiled, but something inside him hardened. He realized they didn't want his greatness. They wanted ownership of it. When the commercial lights turned off, the loneliness returned. Empty hotel rooms, bodyguards outside, and a phone that rang with decisions already made for him. The price of being the chosen one was silence. He couldn't complain, couldn't rebel, couldn't even choose which sneakers to wear at a charity event without approval. Late at night he'd drive back to Akron in the same car he bought after his first check cleared. The neighborhoods hadn't changed. Cracked sidewalks, the smell of rain, kids playing under streetlights. He'd watch them for minutes at a time, unseen, remembering the boy who used to be one of them. One evening, he parked outside his old apartment. The window lights flickered. Someone else lived there now. A woman hung laundry on the balcony, humming a gospel tune his mother once sang. LeBron leaned on the steering wheel and whispered, "What would you say now, Mom?" His phone buzzed. His agent, Rich again. "Media wants you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Don't talk about the deal, okay?" "Why not?" "Because it's not your story to tell, Bron." "Not his story." Then whose was it? And what was hidden inside that contract everyone told him not to read too closely? The next morning at the press conference he faced 30 microphones. Questions came like bullets. "LeBron, what does this deal mean for your future? Do Do you feel pressure being compared to Jordan? How does it feel to be $100 million man? He smiled, repeating the lines the PR team had written the night before, but halfway through a reporter asked, "Did you read the contract yourself?" The room froze. For a second, LeBron's expression cracked. Cameras zoomed in. Then he laughed it off. "I trust my team." But that single hesitation made headlines. Does LeBron really understand his deal? That night the league office called, his agent called, Nike called, 3 different voices, one message, "Stay on script." He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. In the reflection of the broken glass, he saw not an athlete, but a product. Weeks later, during a late-night shoot in LA, a lighting technician, older, graying, clearly not part of the usual crew, approached him. "Kid, you ever read the fine print?" "What?" "Page Directive 47. They call it you should take a look before you start thinking you're free." The man vanished before LeBron could ask another question. The next morning the production schedule had been changed, and no one admitted to hiring a lighting tech by that name. LeBron called his agent. "What's Directive 47? "Never heard of it," Rich said quickly. "Where'd you get that?" "Doesn't matter. Just tell me if it's real. Don't dig into this, Bron. Trust me." That phrase, "don't dig into this," would echo for years. That night, unable to sleep, he stood before the bathroom mirror. His mother's photograph leaned against the sink, Gloria smiling, holding a trophy from his high school game. He touched the glass and whispered, "I did everything right, Mom, so why does it feel wrong?" Behind his reflection, city lights blinked like camera flashes. He turned away. For the first time he wondered whether the system needed a hero, or a hostage. Later, he opened the safe where he kept the original copy of his Nike deal. Page 47 was blank. At least, it looked blank. But under the desk lamp, faint letters appeared, printed in ultraviolet ink. Subjectic, 47. All likeness rights extend beyond athletic retirement. Confidential under corporate protection clause. He stared at the page as if it were a verdict. Outside, thunder cracked over Accra. The next morning, he would find out what Subject 47 really meant, and why no one was supposed to say it aloud. The morning after the thunderstorm, LeBron sat alone in the dim kitchen. The documents spread out under a pale stripe of sunlight. The letters glowed faintly when the light hit them. Subject 47. His coffee went cold as he traced the invisible ink with his finger, whispering the words to himself again and again, as if repetition would change their meaning. Beyond athletic retirement, corporate protection clause. It sounded less like sponsorship and more like ownership. When his phone rang, he didn't answer. He drove aimlessly through the gray Ohio morning until the city disappeared behind him. The highway hummed like static, and his thoughts chased themselves in circles. What if the contract wasn't just about sneakers? What if it was about him, his image, his story, his life? He pulled into a rest stop, and opened the glove compartment. The copy of Sports Illustrated he'd been on the cover of, The Chosen One, stared back. That headline had launched everything. But beneath it, in tiny print he'd never noticed before, a line read, "Image and reproduction courtesy of Nike Inc." He blinked. How could a magazine cover require corporate permission to use his face? He thought the deal had made him untouchable. He was about to learn it made him transparent. He dialed Rich again. "I read the fine print. You're not supposed to." Rich muttered. "It says likeness rights don't expire." "What does that mean?" "It means they can keep using your image for campaigns after you retire." "After I die." Silence. "Rich. Bron, drop this, man. Some pages aren't meant to be read." The line went dead. He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The silence felt heavier than any crowd noise he'd ever heard. A billboard loomed over the highway, his own face smiling, the Nike logo blazing beside him. The caption, "Forever Legend." He laughed bitterly. Forever indeed. That night he couldn't sleep. He turned on the TV, flipping through channels. Everyone seemed to have his face. Commercials, talk shows, even cartoons spoofing him. Fame had turned into surveillance. The system didn't just celebrate him, it replicated him. The next day at practice, the air felt colder. Cameras followed him from the parking lot to the locker room. He could hear producers whispering about brand consistency, as if he were a product line instead of a person. When he missed a shot, a director nearby said, "Let's cut that. We'll retake it later." Retake it. It wasn't even a commercial shoot. It was supposed to be practice. He turned to the crew. "Who authorized filming today?" "Nike Media Division," one replied casually. "They have full access." "Full access to what?"
Everything, Mr. James. Your image is part of the deal. LeBron stared at him. For the first time he realized what full access truly meant. That night, back in his hotel room, the phone rang again. Unknown number. You shouldn't have looked, a voice said. Who is this? Let's just say we both know what directive, and you should know they're watching the watchers. The call ended. He sat motionless for a full minute, before unplugging the phone from the wall. His heartbeat echoed in the silence. He turned on his laptop, searching for any mention of directive. Nothing. Then he tried Nike internal directive. Still nothing. Finally, he typed athlete likeness perpetual rights. Hundreds of results appeared, all legal documents, all sealed settlements, all redacted names, buried under layers of contracts and NDAs. One phrase kept repeating, experimental image reproduction program. He clicked one PDF. It opened to a blurry scan of a form dated 1998, 5 years before his debut. The header read, Project Vol. The text mentioned biometric data, holographic mapping, long-term asset cloning. It sounded like science fiction. But the final line froze him. Subjects 24, 52 active. Subject 4. He shut the laptop, breathing hard. His reflection on the screen looked distorted, multiplied by the glare, like someone else was staring back. At dawn he drove to his mother's house. Gloria met him at the door in her robe, confusion in her eyes. Bronny, what's wrong? Mom, that deal I signed, I think it's more than a contract. Baby, it's just business. They make it complicated so you don't have to worry. No, Mom, I think I signed something that lets them own me, forever. She frowned, cupping his face. Ain't nobody owns you, LeBron, not after what we been through. Then why can't I stop seeing my own face everywhere? Her hand fell away slowly. You always said you wanted to inspire people, she whispered. Yeah, but what if they use that inspiration to sell control? He stayed until sunrise, sitting on the couch, the two of them in silence as the news played. A commercial came on, his voice, his image, selling a new campaign he'd never filmed. Gloria looked at him, startled. When did you shoot that? I didn't. The room went quiet.